Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. Okay, so we are continuing on and picking up with New Mutants issue number 3. Now, here's a cool thing. New Mutants issue number 3 actually kind of deviates away from what we've seen so far. Instead, it actually travels back to Earth and focuses on a character named Armor. Now, this is kind of interesting, right? To really like bring Armor seemingly out of nowhere along with Tabitha Smith with Boom Boom and then Glob. But here's the thing. All right, so this initially picks up really with Armor and Glob just kind of enjoying Krakoa. Right now, this is a cool little moment here. It's a cool little exchange because it's something that we don't really see. I mean, we kind of saw it in the beginning to a degree, but we only saw it insofar as it was focusing on like the peaceful nature, right? Really the idea that mutants had a home, but it wasn't really focusing on like the whole party aspect of it all. And that's one of the things that, given everything in Dawn of X, is easy for writers to miss, and it's good to see that they're not. This is the reason why like New Mutants is probably the best story coming out of Marvel at the moment, is because what you have here is you have this scenario where Armor's just sort of looking at what's going on at the moment, and everybody's just kind of partying and have a good time. Krakoa looks like a blast, right? It looks like the most fun ever. But the other half of this is that for the character of Armor, one of the things she kind of longs for is some of the members that were either part of New Mutants or dealt with like the younger members, really like the New Mutants themselves that weren't officially part of the team, who really aren't there. Just people she's known over the years and people she's been friends with who aren't really there on Krakoa itself. And specifically, this really comes down to the character of Beak. Now, this really sort of plays itself out when she goes to visit Sage, right? Now, Sage is a character that we've kind of talked about, you know, occasionally over the course of Marvel. We've never really gone super in-depth into, and we don't really need to. The nature of Sage is that her brain works like a computer, right? So she never forgets information, and it categorizes and organizes that information perfectly, right? So imagine like Bradley Cooper from Limitless, and that's basically Sage. It's one of these things where like Armor kind of sits down and says, well, let's kind of go through like who's registered and who's not registered, who's here and who's not here. Right now, we don't get like a full list, right? Ed Brisson doesn't give us like a full breakdown of everyone, right? Because the mutant population, while it's not as high as it was before the events of House of M, it's certainly a lot higher than it was after the events of House of M, right? So there's still thousands of mutants out there as opposed to like the millions that were there before. And so what this would do is it would end up being like probably like a giant size comic, right? So like a double size comic where it's like, you know, I don't know, 44 pages or like 46 pages, and it would just be nothing but names. It'd be the least interesting comic book ever. But the fact remains that she's kind of going through this list of people. So like Bishop, of course, is registered, so on and so forth, but characters like Beak are not there. And so what she ends up doing is kind of saying, okay, well, like, let's go see if we can find them, right? Let's go see if we can find these guys. And so what she ends up doing is, of course, going and speaking directly with Glob. And Glob, it's kind of a funny thing, right? Because one of the things he hits on is like, well, everybody's in more of a peaceful state, right? So people aren't really on edge. And that's one of the cool things to kind of take note of. And it's one of the things to overlook. This is easy to overlook when it comes to Dawn of X, right? Like, you look at the nature of Krakoa, and despite the death of Xavier, which really sort of caught everybody off guard, different things like that, for the most part, people aren't nearly as on edge as they were before, right? And that's one of the big kind of tonal changes that you notice that's going on with the X-Men right now, right? If you were to go and read X-Men pretty much any time before Jonathan Hickman took it over, the overall tone of the X-Men is, today might be my last day on Earth. And while it's not the worst thing ever, after a while it does kind of get old, and so it's good to see it kind of take a reprieve. Now, the reality is it took like 50 years for it to get old, right? So I guess that says something about the nature of X-Men storytelling, but it is cool to kind of see it and see the various mutants on Earth in a position to where they're not always like on edge and feeling like everything is going to come to an end, to see them just kind of enjoying their lives, right? And so Glob asked the question, like, do you think Pixie would be into me? And it's kind of interesting there, because my thought reading this was like, dude, shoot your shot, man. Like, the worst you can do is say no, and you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, man. So like, walk up to the girl and say, hey, like, do you want to get dinner on Friday? And then like, she's going to say yes, or she's going to say no. If she says no, it's not the end of the world. If she says yes, well, you're off to the races, home slice. You better dress your best, man. You better learn those manners. So it's cool to see these small little things. And this is the reason why I say New Mutants is so cool, right? I mean, we hit on this time and time again when it comes to like focusing on the New Mutant team, right? It's designed to be lighthearted. It's designed to be a story where it focuses on like the struggles of teenagers and different things like that. You know, these younger kids getting out into the world and getting out there exploring like the dating life and falling in love and out of love and different things like that. It's these cool little moments. And it's things that kind of allow us to sort of tap back into when we were teenagers and to kind of look back and be like, why was I so worried about that? Why did I think that was so important at the time? But what ends up happening here is Armor travels to where Robert DaCosta is and meets with Boom Boom. Now at this point, she doesn't really know, or I guess she's kind of figuring it out that they've basically taken off to space, to go hang out with Sam Guthrie and all them. So that's what we've really covered with New Mutants issue 1 and 2. But it's interesting to see Boom Boom here, right? Boom Boom is an old school character. Tabitha Smith, she goes back to 1985, right? So she's not new. She appeared back in Secret Wars 2, I think it was. But she's a character that can create these sort of like plasma bombs. And what they do is they explode with a concussive force. And the impact of the bombs is relative to their size, right? So if it's the size of a golf ball, it'll be enough to like, hurt you or something like that, to maybe knock you down. But if it's the size of like a beach ball, it'll punch a hole through metal, right? Now, over the years, the ability for her to demonstrate control over her powers is kind of waxed and waned. And a lot of that's because the biggest emphasis that came with Boom Boom was really like with her and Richter. Richter, and a few other people as part of like X-Force and like her time with X-Factor back during, I think it was Walter and Louise Simonson's run, and then during Rob Liefeld's run on X-Force. I'm not going to swear to that. After that, she's just kind of been around, right? And not a whole lot has been done with her character, but she's just an old school character, right? She's a legacy character. So she's always just kind of been around. But it's interesting to sort of see her be involved here because what she wants is adventure. She's bored out of her mind. She's like, there's nothing to do here. She's restless, right? Like she longs for that adventurous life. But ultimately she ends up settling with Armor, where she basically says, well, let's go out and let's go see if we can't find Beak and these various characters. And so what this does is, of course, it leads to them grabbing a couple people along the way and then traveling out to Nebraska. Now, the reality was that when Armor told Tabitha that they were going to be going to Nebraska, it's like, well, that kind of sucks. And understandably so, because Nebraska only has two things going for it, nothing and the Cornhuskers. And so it's like, okay, I guess. But when they do, of course, they arrive at the home of Beak himself. Now, here's the interesting thing when it comes to Beak, right? A little bit of explanation here. Beak made his debut back in New X-Men issue number 117. That was really the tail end of the ES4 Extinction event when Cassandra Nova wiped out 16 million mutants in the island of Genosha. But for Beak himself, with his introduction going into some of his later appearances in New X-Men, it was really focusing on the love interest between himself and Angel Salvatore. Now, eventually, Beak was basically taken off the New X-Men and thrown directly into the Exile storylines. In my opinion, I really kind of felt like the Exiles team was kind of the unsellables. The characters that were just characters really couldn't hold a story or really couldn't hold their own comic, or was just kind of a place to throw characters. The post House of M Exile stories were amazing, right? Like Exiles World Tour, that was amazing, right? Where they went to like the 2099 universe and like the Future Imperfect universe. It was cool that they jumped around from reality to reality, but the issue with it was really just trying to find a place for Beak in like the Marvel landscape at the time. And this lasted for a number of years. Now, eventually he returned back and actually lost his powers for a time, reverted to like a human form, and then basically took up residence with Angel Salvatore. The funny thing was that when they were both at the Xavier school, he got her knocked up. She ended up getting pregnant. But basically, this is just kind of the situation where they've essentially retreated away from Krakoa and basically taken up residence in Nebraska. And the question was why, right? Like why did they ended up basically rejecting the idea of moving to Krakoa? And the reason why is because the father, or at least seemingly the father of Beak himself, is dealing with Taylor Ellis disease. Now, I thought this was an actual disease and I looked it up. Apparently it's not, but it's basically, at least in this story as it's told, it's a really, really rare version of dementia that basically begins to just kind of break down the body to the point where people die exceedingly fast, right? Like it was named after a guy named Taylor Ellis who died 4 months after originally contracting the disease, that he ended up dying from it. But that's basically what the father of Beak is suffering from, and that's why they chose not to go. Now, this is cool, right? This is, I mean, it's not cool that his father's dying, but it's a cool concept insofar as one of the things that tends to get lost when it comes to comic books is that you sort of see this tendency where like the characters move from like one major event to the next. There really is no downtime in between. You don't really get a lot of tidbits in there in terms of like what they're doing with their own personal life. The X-Men kind of doing meaningful things or showing us what's going on in the back end why they're doing some of the things that they're doing on a more personal level. And so it's cool to see that Beak's character is kind of being expanded, if only so far as to show his life outside of the X-Men and why he chose not to go to Krakoa, that his father was basically dying. And the result was that he didn't do that because he wanted to spend as much time with his father as he could. Now, the cool thing about this is that Armor shows up and says, well, but on Krakoa, we have medicines that can cure this kind of stuff. She injects it into the father of Beak, and he makes a recovery like that. And it's awesome because what this does is it gives Beak the kind of satisfaction he was looking for insofar as his father basically returning, and then gives him a reason to return to the X-Men. It's a cool moment, right? It's a cool, meaningful, and beautiful little moment, right? Because like, who of us have lost a family member to something like this? And what would we have not given to have somebody come along with seemingly some kind of miracle cure? It takes an injection and the world is fixed, right? Like everything is okay again. It's a great little relatable moment, and I absolutely adore it. Like I think it's beautifully done. The issue with this is that once this cure is applied to the father of Beak, then of course once they go upstairs, Beak asks Armor like, did you bring anybody else? And she's like, no. And there's just a bunch of crazy folks outside, and they basically snatch the kids up, and like things are popping off. And it's kind of nuts here because what this guy does is he shows up and he says, look, like you guys have all these medicines, right? Like you mutants have all these medicines and you've denied them to our people. So like you're gonna give them to us now, or like we're gonna take everybody out. Now it's not a great big huge thing, right? It's not a great big huge earth shattering thing. It's a small little thing, but I love little moments like this. I love little stories like this, right? Because at most this will be a 2, possibly 3 issue arc, and that'll be it, right? Like this will probably conclude in issue number 4, if that, right? It'll start and end really, really quickly. But I love these small little things, right? Because what it shows is you get these small little conflicts that go on. They're not huge. They're not like a great big crossover, right? Like you're not going to see the Avengers show up here and like help Armor against these guys. There's no reason for you to. I just like these small little things here, right? But it also shows kind of how the world is dealing with the idea that mutants are having a far more impactful approach there, because these guys show up with like power dampening missiles. It's these cool little things, right? Because Armor kind of jumps in. She of course has the ability to kind of create this sort of psionic armor on herself that's actually pretty powerful. Like it's pretty durable in terms of how she impacts and how she deals with various other people out there, but it's like a small little skirmish. And what we're likely going to see here is kind of a display of what it is that Beak's capable of. And the reason why that matters is because historically speaking, Beak was a character who was never really taken seriously. And so that's why it's going to be a small little thing, right? Because Beak will basically be able to kind of come out here, fight alongside the other mutants who are there. And it's going to be Ed Brisson's way of saying, hey, like, here's why Beak matters. Here's what his powers are. Here's what he's capable of. And like, this is why he'd be an interesting addition to the X-Men. And most likely it'll be the reason why he ends up returning. So it's a cool moment. But with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys want to see my uncensored and versus videos, head over to patreon.com/Comics Explained. And if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace. I want to give a shout out to Jason C, Austin S, Jason S, Austin H, Philip, and Austin B. We have a lot of Austins in our Patreon, as well as Genosis916. Genosis didn't give us a first and last name, so we kind of had to roll with it. I didn't mention your all's last names. I figured you guys didn't want me to throw them out there, but I want to say thank you to you all. By the way, your Rob Corps rings should be on their way. For our Honor Guard members of the Rob Corps, for these special patrons, your custom Rob Corps rings should be on their way. They're being shipped to me. After that, I will have them shipped to you. Stay tuned, keep your eye on Patreon and your messages, and you will hear about them coming to you. Thank you.